Okay, so we must be live. Greetings, Jason. It's really nice to have such an expert today in our studio. It's a virtual studio. And yeah, we had Putin and Trump phone call, notorious phone call, I'll call it like that, because allegedly Putin promised not to attack Ukraine's critical infrastructure and all that. And right now we're having another drone strike on Kyiv. Some of our colleagues and me, including, had to go to the shelter and postpone this stream. So hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. So to start with, the call between President Trump and President Putin went, maybe we can say, in a more stable manner, and ending up with promises of hockey matches, if I'm correct.
Right. So I think that the call was probably what we expected. Nothing really firm came of it. There's no concrete resolutions. There's this general sort of assumptions or statements that they will do things like avoid attacking the energy infrastructure. But as far as actually having a ceasefire or really being closer to any sort of resolution of the war, it's not. I mean, there's no substantial change from what things were like yesterday. So I think that at this point, it's we have to wait to see what happens next. It is clear, though, that the White House is going to continue trying to do this. And I think that in the short term, they will realize that Putin is not interested in offering a substantive peace.
Okay, so what can you say after the finish of this talks? To say at the least, there is no news about the talk of Trump and Zelensky after this phone call. Um, we, okay, my app says for
Well,
me to
it
go to
definitely
the
seems
shelter,
that this
but
call went better than the Zelensky meeting with Trump.
yeah, yeah. So today, President Trump and Putin talked about the need for peace, and they both agreed that this conflict must end with a long-lasting peace, according to the post of Caroline Levitt on X social network. And as she says, as she writes, both leaders agreed that future lies in the enhancement of United States and Russian negotiations and their relations between these two countries, which includes, I quote, huge economic deals and geopolitical stability after reaching the peace. What does this mean for us?
Well, I think that it's probably concerning that the Russian side made a statement afterwards, after this call, and they said that the U.S. and Russia have a specific role in the world in ensuring that there's peace. I would actually interpret that as not a positive sign because it's saying that the two countries will work on peace, and not including Ukraine, which is pretty much what I think is occurring here. I think the White House made a conscious decision to just do what it's going to do. It's no longer going to consult with Ukraine. It's going to go ahead with the plan as it sees fit.
Okay, so no talk about Ukraine without Ukraine is no longer the rule.
No, I think that's over. I think it's very over.
Okay, no talk about Ukraine without Ukraine is over. And about the hockey match, I heard allegations that both leaders agreed on a joint sporting event after some normalization of their negotiations and relations. As far as I'm concerned, they agreed on the partial ceasefire, but this plan is still needs to be agreed upon in Kyiv, and we don't know the details.
Well, the partial ceasefire is just simply not striking specific facilities. I don't think there's going to be a problem with that. I think that's going to be very easy to agree to. It's definitely probably in Ukraine's interest, just given the fact that Ukraine's going to have significant problems rebuilding the infrastructure without foreign assistance, of which the United States was a major partner, and the U.S. has now backed out. So unfortunately, this has put, tilted everything. It's going to be very difficult for Ukraine to have a lot of leverage in the conversation because the U.S. side, the White House specifically, is putting so much pressure on Ukraine, and it's not equally applying the pressure to Russia. So going ahead, I think it is going to be a very challenging time for Ukraine, and it's really we just have to wait to see what happens next.
Okay. So we are in an unstable and undecided situation right now. As far as I am concerned, you have some lesson in the university later, so we'll have to set you free from our live stream just in a couple of minutes. Am I correct?
That's true.
Okay. So for the last question, do you think that economic economic cooperation and those economic deals will lead to some sustainable peace and polarization of the world like it was in Cold War era, or we are witnessing some nothing more than just a couple of deals that will mean nothing for the Kremlin, in fact, because they are notorious for breaking deals and peace deals made with Western partners.
Well, absolutely the case. I mean, I think we all recognize at this point that we can't trust the Kremlin. We can't trust Putin. That's quite clear to everybody. And unfortunately, I think the White House has not come to that conclusion yet. And at this point, they're so gun ho, desperate to just end the war. That I think it's looking like it's come against the advantage of Ukraine. It's very unclear what's going to happen as far as peacekeepers go, or who's going to enforce any sort of a treaty. So if there's a violation, who's responsible for enforcing it? And they don't discuss this. They don't discuss, what would be the security plan for Ukraine? How is the security of Ukraine going to be guaranteed? They don't discuss that at all. So when you look at all these things, I think it's just a lot of very bad signs. I don't see anything at this point that gives me a lot of optimism as to where things are going.
Okay, so we should keep some degree of optimism because there were huge no huge statements that the support for Ukraine is over completely. This is the big red dot, and we are friends with the other side right now. So we didn't hear that, and the military and intelligence aid has been resumed after the Ukrainian side has agreed to a ceasefire deal for 30 days. How it goes, I believe we shall see. We shall see in the coming weeks and even days, maybe even hours. But we will see and talk about it later. Thank you, Mr. Smart, for joining our live stream now, and see you again.
Thank you so much.
So, guys, next will be operator Starsky on UATV English studio, commenting on these talks for a little bit longer than Mr. Jason J. Smart, and we'll be back on just in a couple of minutes, so stay tuned and share this live stream. Can you hear me, Mr. Starsky?
Yes, I can. Hello, hello.
Okay, hello, hello. So let us start. One moment. Okay, we continue our live stream on UATV English with operator Starsky, and today's topic is the talk of President Trump with Putin, the phone call, after which we have news of hockey matches and huge economic cooperation deals in future. What do you think about that?
Uh, I just read the statement made by Dmitriev, who said that he expects the cooperation between Rosatom, Roscosmos, and Elon Musk. And frankly speaking, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that Elon Musk does not cooperate with, I don't know, Ayatollah Khamenei, for example, in terms of space programs. Kim Jong-un also can offer a lot because they are also introduce different technologies, especially rocket technologies. It would be really, really cool if Elon Musk could unite his efforts with other terrorist regimes. That would be perfect. ISIS, I'm not really sure if ISIS has a space program so far, but we know that they're very, very good at, creating things that explode. So apparently they could help him as well somehow. We will see, but I already see this absolutely beautiful uh, trend that we may probably observe in the future.
Okay, I can hear some echo coming in. Can you hear that?
No, I can't.
Mm-hmm. One moment. I'll change my microphone. Maybe it is the case. So let's try this microphone.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. What I am thinking about, I can still hear the echo. Let's change it. Again. Yeah, what I'm thinking about is that promises of a ceasefire were made and this stop of, strikes on the energy infrastructure. But in the end, we have right now Shaheds over Kiev. And those Shahed drones, they are very, very loud right now, and air defense is working. So, what is the price of this promise? Then it is broken right at the start. So, an hour has passed, or what? I mean,
I literally just wanted to mention that because Putin currently stated that he gave an order to stop the strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And we already see that Kyiv is massively attacked by Shahed drones. I will speak from my experience, okay? Because I remember the Minsk agreements that were made with Russia, and since 2015, since my very, very first deployment to the front lines in 2015, it was a so-called B sector. It's Kurakhove, Marinka, Krasnohorivka, those areas, Pisky and Avdiivka. Since my very, very first deployment, I have never seen Russians literally obeying the Minsk agreements, obeying and following their own promises. We lost men during the Russian strikes, during the Russian shellings in those days, 2019, even when we had probably the biggest ceasefire that was initiated by President Zelensky. And so our viewers could understand, when President Zelensky became a president of Ukraine 2019, he announced the biggest ceasefire since 2014. Basically, we had our artillery withdrawn from the front lines. We had our armored vehicles and tanks withdrawn from the front line. The big artillery wasn't present there anymore to provide cover to our troops. And 2019, 2020, we were losing men because of this, because Russians, knowing that we are not attacking, that we don't have artillery, that we don't have support, they started digging like crazy, and they started shortening the distance between their positions and our positions. They were literally digging trenches in front of us, and we could not do anything. It's really naive to expect that Putin will keep his word this time, only because it's Donald Trump. People have very, I would say, wrong understanding of situation. People who support all this amazing idea and believe that Putin will not attack, because they don't understand that Putin didn't start the war because he wanted peace. I don't imagine how it works. How do you start the war if you want peace? It doesn't work like that. And the same situation here. Putin doesn't want a ceasefire because he wants peace, because he wants the war that he started himself finished. He wants to continue, and we will see probably a different version of Minsk agreements that never worked.
Yeah, I remember those agreements very, very good. And actually, my father of my very good friend was in the Debaltseve cauldron, as they call it, the Debaltseve encirclement. Yeah, there were questions what we were fighting for, what we were fighting with. After Minsk agreements, after all that, since took into action, there still were deaths, and there were practically no peace. It was a postponed full-scale war. I cannot imagine what
according,
you...
according to the Minsk agreements, the very city of Debaltseve belonged to Ukraine. During the Minsk agreements, Ukrainian side and Russian side agreed that Ukraine keeps control over Debaltseve, and then in 2015, Russians took it.
Yes, because, what was happening back then, nothing was so straightforward. The propaganda talking points were in place, the Kiev regime, the facts with a revolution of dignity, and we did not have that much support back then. I remember that we were trying to convey, we as Ukrainian people and the media were trying to convey that this is an aggressive war, this is an invasion, but little to no much people listened back then in Europe. And of course, we had almost no external aid and external support in that time, not exactly what we were having since 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we have a slight chance. I have huge expectations from our European colleagues. Today we saw an incredible speech made by Chancellor Merz. And this is very much inspiring, because apparently European colleagues of the US slowly realized that the biggest ally of the NATO countries, which is the United States, do not really consider Russia a threat anymore. So it's a big luck for us that European countries, especially the Baltic countries that know what it means, Russian ceasefires and everything else. It's really good that they understand this, and they already started moving forward, making first steps to improve their defense. Hopefully, they will also help Ukraine as well. I know that there's a very, very big military aid is planned to be delivered to Ukraine, worth something like 40 billion euro, which is a lot. And I really hope to see air-to-air missiles, surface-to-air missiles that we can use to intercept Russian drones and Russian cruise missiles that will be flying and will be shot at Ukraine regardless of what Trump says, because Putin. However, like the difference is not that big, okay? Um, I, despite what Putin says, those missiles will be striking Ukraine regardless. So I really, really hope that we will see the necessary supplies coming to Ukraine. Won't see things like ATACMS anymore, but hopefully our European colleagues will also supply us with something else that we can utilize.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing right now is probably consolidation of our European friends. Maybe some voices that are saying that no, you must not arm yourself, will be lowered, and those voices will not have the veto right probably in the next vote for the joint defense of Europe. What really inspires me is the solid, this solid. It is a promise. It is a promise, more than a promise, that Ukraine will join the European Union by 2030. We hear that from Ukrainian authorities, from European authorities. It is a concluded fact. So they have agreed upon that and accepted it. Well, it's not NATO, but I believe we are not seeing NATO anymore. Maybe NATO is not even that much of a use right now. There are rumors that all the US troops will be pulled out of Germany to Hungary. I cannot explain why exactly, but yeah, we hear those rumors. And the Baltic countries are in a great danger because, bureaucracy is the second name of many Western alliances and blocs. And, well, they have those times for the bureaucratic procedures of NATO to take action in a case of a direct invasion from the east. So those are questions, they are more rhetoric ones here, I believe. And really, what was elusive just a year ago is clear now. Everyone should count on themselves, on local, regional alliances, on partners, on keeping on together. What really is exciting and really keeps me encouraged is that we're not alone here. We have Poland, Baltic states, other European partners, and are you not sure? But I've heard that Chancellor Merz is eager to transfer Taurus missiles, at least part of them, to Ukraine. Did you hear about those news, or they are just more like rumors right now?
Yes, there were several, let's say, sources speaking about this. They were saying that Chancellor Scholz most probably will announce delivering the Taurus missiles to Ukraine in the observable future. That would be amazing. And this, the biggest concern that I have at this point is that one of the demands, one of the conditions issued by internationally wanted war criminal Putin to Trump, according to Russians, is that all the military aid to Ukraine must be stopped. And generally speaking, Putin was talking about it with Tucker Carlson, for example, 1 year ago. That was one of his main messages to the Western audience, that military aid to Ukraine must be stopped. So my concern is, will the US pressure European countries to stop the military support to Ukraine? That is question number one. And of course, question number two, in case the
Yeah, it's like the peaceful Shahad drones. They are just over our heads. I'm sorry. Keep on.
Yeah, be safe, my friend, because
Thank you.
currently there's at least 3 Shaheds flying over Kiev right now. Um, and question number 2, in case we already have such promising news about cooperation between Elon Musk and Roscosmos, and by the way, the chief of Roscosmos was notorious Russian neo-Nazi Dmitry Rogozin. As you probably remember, he's a big anti-Semite and neo-Nazi, and he openly talks about it. If we already have such things happening, most probably, concern number 2: will US also share their military intelligence with Russia? Because nothing is impossible. We already saw United States military supplies and intelligence to Ukraine being stopped. So that is concern number 2, and in my opinion, that is extremely concerning. Concern number 3 is that most recently Trump withdrew the US from the specific international group that was documenting evidences on Russian atrocities committed in Ukraine. And they also had this group that coordinated the efforts of the US Justice Department, trying to make Putin and other war criminals face responsibility for their crimes committed against Ukraine. We're talking not only about Putin, but also Ayatollah Khamenei and Kim Jong-un and Lukashenko, who used his territory to open the gates for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So they were also spared by Trump's decision, literally, and the crimes that were committed by Russians, for example, in Bucha and Izium, in Kherson, in all those places, they will no longer be investigated by the United States investigators. So we already see the first step being made from, investigating crimes to abstaining from it. My concern number 3 is: will there be further steps? Will they start investigating a panty-wearing crucified boy in Kramatorsk, or American biolabs in Ukraine making viruses that target Russian population and things like that? Because in the end, we already see processes that can literally, lead to things like having me or other Ukrainian veterans arrested by the Interpol for crimes against the people of Donbass that were only committed in the imagination of Putin. We can see.
Well, I remember 2022 and 2023 when people were talking in the United States that that group on war crimes and crimes against the humanity will not be really effective from the United States point of view, because they do not want to be prosecuted too for possible crimes against the humanity and war crimes committed by some United States representatives of during military operations in the Middle East. They were really concerned about that. And because of this, the whole thing was like halted back, because they didn't want to set up a precedent. There could be a lot of debate. The invasion of Iraq and operations in Afghanistan. Many people in the world could argue and could try to sue United States for their interventions there. No matter that it was the war fight against world terrorism, they could just use that international law against them.
Yeah, I agree on that, but that's not the first case already, because we know that, for example, there were several projects funded by the USAID working in Ukraine, and specifically coordinating the investigation, collecting of evidence, speaking with the witnesses and victims, And those projects also don't receive their funding anymore because USA doesn't really work in Ukraine anymore. So it's not the first case. Generally, to me, and I don't know, maybe you noticed as well, but generally to me, current Trump administration is doing the work of like Russian foreign ministry. They work very, very hard to improve the image of Russia. They never call them invaders, as if they're afraid of being shot when they are, for example, interrogated in the Senate, right, in the U.S. Senate, and asked directly, "Do you consider Russians? Do you recognize Russians as invaders?" They go, "Well, I have some problem speaking. I forgot English language. I don't know how to build sentences anymore." So I believe that, when Donald Trump stops being a US president, he generally has a good opportunity to get employed in the Russian foreign ministry because Lavrov is an old man and he will have to go soon and somebody will need to supplant him.
Well, that whole thing just reminded me of the, of World War II time posters like "Do not intervene with Europe." It is not our case, our action. We have America first, and we know what happened next. America had to intervene, after all, because if not for that, probably most of Europe, Western Europe, would fall under Soviet influence in the end. Or we could have seen the absence of defeat of Nazism. That would be one of the outcomes. And whether this time we have to repeat all that, it's a big question. I don't know if that's a rhetorical question, because obviously we do not have to repeat the lessons of the past for the third time with world wars, and let us hope that this will never be so. But to be honest, I still have this very, very strong feeling that we are seeing right now the Winter War. The Winter War that was part of World War II. And let us hope that this war ends just like the Winter War. Finland saved its independence. Yes, it saved its sovereignty, independence. It was neutral, but we see 70 years later finally joining the alliance they wanted to join, but never could because there was a promise to Russia not to join that treaty organization. And after the full-scale war of Ukraine, full-scale war against Ukraine started by Russia, two countries joined NATO. It was Sweden and Finland. Two countries that never expected some formal, some formal desire to join the alliance. They were neutral before the war, and they've seen that on your own, it is very difficult to hold back such an unpredictable and wild neighbor as we have right now here. Obviously, what comes next, we cannot predict because no one can predict what happens next. What we're seeing that we have some local regional allies, we have some partners, and some partners far away over the ocean are considering having other partners. That's obviously what we can say. Let us not forget that NATO is still on the ground, it is still acting, and the United States is still the main guarantor and the main supplier of this alliance. Let us hope that it will continue.
Absolutely, but I believe that soon we will see first attempts of trying to abstain with the US military supplies to the NATO countries. Because again, there's a lot of operators of US guided systems. There are M270, as far as I remember, multiple launch rocket systems. There are HIMARS systems operated by the European countries, European NATO members, and of course they all rely big time on the supplies of shells from the United States. So that is one of the biggest concerns. And generally speaking, Putin cannot celebrate more at this very point, knowing that he now has opportunity to literally cut all kinds of artillery supplies to the European NATO members. That is apparently his one of the biggest victories, and that is, by the way, one of the reasons why European countries are so much concentrated right now on ramping up their own defense capabilities, because they see the situation for the first time in how much, like 70 years. Unfortunately, you cannot rely on your biggest ally who used to defend freedom and security around the world on the European continent, right? So you gotta do it yourself, because as you can see, your formerly biggest ally is now defending the war criminals and cannot even recognize them as war criminals on camera.
Well, what happened during the halt of United States military intelligence sharing and US aid military support? The radar stations on F-16s transferred from Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway, they were turned off from the Pentagon, and the pilots couldn't see targets going in for them. They couldn't see missiles, so those planes became more dangerous for pilots and really harder to operate on the front line. And that raised concerns of already two NATO partners that initially wanted to buy F-35 jets from Lockheed Martin, United States. It was Portugal and Canada. Portugal ordered not a very big batch of those planes, and Canada have ordered 35 or more. It's a squad, I believe, an entire escadrille wing, which is obviously a lot. We remember that Ukraine has only 50, 60 F-16s of the air fleet. And it raised concerns whether Pentagon will turn off the stealth systems on those F-35s, the radar stations, and the main advantage of F-35 is their stealth system. In terms of aerodynamics and maneuverability, F-16 is a better plane. Yeah, and the whole point was in that stealth system. And those countries are really considering alternatives because nobody wants to end up like Ukraine. When you have weapons supplied by your partner, and then, well, it's no longer working unless you agree to something that they want you to agree on. And the initiatives and the alternatives might be Eurofighter Typhoon, might be Dassault Rafale. Also, it could be the Gripen of Sweden, but as far as I'm concerned, the engine that the Gripen uses is produced with United States technology. And they can really do the Switzerland twist, let's call it like that, and ban any use of military aircraft with their engines for other countries. And actually, there was a huge decline in Swiss military production and military infrastructure industry. Huge money were lost because European weapons, including Gepard air defense systems and ammunition for them, could not be re-exported to Ukraine. And they've lost from 20 to 40% of their income, as far as I know, on new contracts, and they are changing in the constitution. They are already trying to change that status of neutrality to allow weapons to be re-exported to countries in war when the situation is urgent, as they say for themselves. What will happen to United States military production? Many producers and companies already lose billions of dollars, maybe even dozens of billions of dollars. The trust is broken. And for the last 70 years, the trust in United States military infrastructure was solid like a rock. What we see now? Well,
not not so much good news, unfortunately. We can see. Speaking of Gripen, I believe that the engine on Gripen can be swapped for European-produced engines, but if not, generally, Eurofighter 2000 is much more, I would say, modern airplane with better capabilities and useful load, and it can be also utilized pretty well. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's 100% European built. I know that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
uses some of American-produced missiles like AIM-9, AIM-120, but generally speaking, it can utilize all kinds of weaponry produced in European countries. So that could be a good option. I'm not really sure if Eurofighter is good at operating from the unpaved runways like Gripen, because Gripen can, and this is one of the biggest advantages because you can literally land and take off from different places in Ukraine that are not runways, because those are often targeted by Russians. So that is one of the biggest advantages. But if Eurofighter, I gotta check it out actually. If Eurofighter can do that, that is amazing.
And you know what we have seen in Ukraine? United States produced missiles and bombs were adapted to MiG-29s, to Su-27s. This was people thought it was impossible, but still we have air defenses working with other missiles. So as far as I know, some land complexes of air defense, they use missiles from MiGs 29, which are not air-to-air missiles, which are converted to land-to-air missiles. And everything is possible if you're willing to do that. I mean, not like everything, but most of the technology is interchangeable, and even swapping the engine on a Gripen. Probably Sweden has some technology and capability to produce their own engines because you know they've been a neutral country and had to do everything by all themselves for 70 years. And Saab, the producer, is an airspace company. They have their missiles launched into space, literally. I believe they can
Yeah,
figure something out.
yeah. Saab is an incredible company that builds airplanes, missiles, civil airplanes, all kinds of stuff.
Very good
Um,
cars, very reliable cars.
I'm not really sure about the cars. I'm a bigger fan of their airplanes, actually. So big hopes on Sweden, especially as now Sweden becomes a NATO member, became a NATO member, which makes me very, very much proud of those people.
Okay, so we have still a couple of minutes to sum up the thoughts after this phone call between Trump and Putin. We have the change of the paradigm, I believe. Something I really don't feel anything catastrophic yet because, you know, the worst had already happened. That was the halt in United States military aid and intelligence sharing. It was the retreat from Kursk region, which was obviously a connected event. But still, we have something to offer, I believe, and our partners will have that too.
The worst happened in 2022,
Yeah.
actually. And one thing that scares me literally after that, like on first place, it's like the full-scale Russian invasion thing that scares me the most, right? And second thing is when Trump says that we had a talk with Putin, everything is so good. Because when he says that, it usually means that either Ukrainians will be withdrawing from Suja or having their military aid or intelligence cut. Because you remember when he first stopped the intelligence and military aid to Ukraine, and after that he had talks with Russian representatives, and he said that the talks were so good. Everything is now so fine. You can see Ukrainians withdrawing from Russia, and Ukraine is collapsing, and there's so many Ukrainians. That big imaginary Ukrainian army completely surrounded in Kursk, which Russians are still searching for and cannot find. And everything is so fine. Finally, Ukraine is losing. So when he says that the talks with Putin went well, that is something that actually scares me, because I don't believe that we will hear any good news from Trump anymore.
Mm-hmm. So, what I am seeing that the energy ceasefire, so-called one, has been already broken by Russia, and an energy station, this distribution station near Slovyansk in Donetsk region, has been destroyed, and that caused the city to go blackout, literally. Well, that's not what many probably expected when agreeing on that energy ceasefire. Uh, did we expect that? Yes, we did.
Of course.
Would it have happened? Yes, it would. But what comes next? That's the question.
What comes next, in my opinion, things like military aid to Ukraine will be negotiated. I believe that Trump will have to put effort, because Putin asked him, will have to put effort to pressure European countries. And because I'm a bad prophet, I believe that it will happen. So we will see the pressure on the European allies of Ukraine, because Putin was begging to stop the military support to Ukraine like a crybaby all these years, right? As soon as Ukraine started receiving the land lease, the weaponry from the European countries, from the United States, Putin was literally blaming all his fails on the American weaponry, on the European weaponry. That is one of the biggest narratives, that we would take Kiev in 3 days if not for the Western weaponry. However, Ukraine only started receiving Western weaponry, I believe, 3 months later, after the Russian invasion. We had so much stockpile, so much weapons in our stockpile, so we could only last for probably 3 months in terms of artillery. And basically that's it. So one way or another, I believe that we will see pressure on the European countries, pressure on other NATO allies of the United States to stop supporting Ukraine. And of course, we will see growing pressure on Ukrainian leadership, growing pressure on President Zelensky, because generally speaking, Trump is complying with all Putin's demands according to Istanbul Agreement, right? So first it's military supplies to Ukraine. Then we will see pressure on Zelensky to hold elections in violation of Ukrainian constitution, because Trump doesn't respect Ukrainian constitution. Then we will see pressure on Zelensky to give up several territories that are not controlled, by the way, fully by Russians, and things like that. That is something that I literally anticipate, because as of this moment, Trump didn't prove that he cares about Ukraine at least a bit, right? Whatever we saw at this, until this day, is literally Trump playing for Putin, aligning with him, helping him to liberate the Sudzha region from the Kursk Oblast from the Ukrainian soldiers. So we will see continuation of that. And again, I'm a bad prophet, but I don't expect anything good from this man.
Well, what they might want to impose on European partners is not what they will eventually do in the end, because they have strong leaders too, and they have some teeth, I believe, because European weapons manufacturers and defense industry has been on the rise since this downfall of American weapons manufacturers, and even Volkswagen was saved from bankruptcy by Rheinmetall with propositions of military contracts. So we shall see. We shall see what comes next. But that was Operative Starsky today for UATV. It was Pavel Stelmach, your host and editor-in-chief of the channel. Thank you for being with us, for watching this, and let us hope for the best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you so much, all the people in the chat.
Thank you, and have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.